episode of the Writer's Bunkhouse, the official podcast of the Horsemen Publishing Company. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. Joining me today in the bunkhouse is my brand new friend, Kait. She has given me permission to screw up her last name, but I'm going to do the best I can. Kait Disney Leugers. How are you doing, Kait?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
I am good. I am very good. I'm looking forward to this discussion. But before we get started, let's tell the people a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm a romance writer. I have a series of paranormal romance, and then I have a contemporary D&D romance coming out on November 5th. So that's exciting. I am a mom of two and a social media manager. I do social media for my local woman-owned bookstore and other Four Horsemen authors. I spent a long time working in Silicon Valley in digital marketing. Now I write, take care of my kids, and help other authors build their brand.
How old are the ones?
They're very
Very
funny.
nice. Yeah, they're all fun ages, though. They really are. Even when they're teenagers and they hate you, but then they hit their 20s and come back to be your best friends. So, it's good. So, Kait, I always like to start at the beginning. Tell me where you grew up and what kind of music did your family listen to? And also, was it a family of readers?
I actually am from Ohio originally. I live in the DC area now. We grew up listening to music all the time. My parents had wildly different musical tastes. My mom loved Springsteen, Billy Ray Cyrus, and Alice Cooper. My dad was really into Ozzy and Metallica. So I got a little bit of everything. And
So, your mom should join me on my other podcast. I do a Springsteen fan podcast.
oh man, she'd be into that. She
That
loves Bruce Springsteen.
that's nice. So, what went wrong? How come you didn't become a fan of the boss?
Everybody's a fan of the boss. You're either a super fan or a casual fan, but everybody's a fan.
You would be surprised the amount of people that I run into. So I have to be very nice and not be ugly to them.
They
Yeah,
deserve it.
yeah, exactly. Were you a big reader as a kid?
Oh, yeah. I grew up in the time of the Book It program at Pizza Hut. You bribe me with pizza to read books. I'll read as many books as you want me to.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, it's around for decades now, but the 90s was
Okay.
its big thing. And you'd read books, you get stars. If you reach a certain amount of stars, you get a personal pan pizza. For me, that was a huge motivator because I love pizza.
This is the
Um,
greatest thing ever. How did I
it was
miss
like
that?
my mom's a big reader. My dad's more into audiobooks.
Okay.
We were always reading. The house I grew up in was right behind the library. I would walk around the front of my house down the other way. There's the library. I practically lived there. So yeah, we would take family trips, and we never flew anywhere because my dad's afraid of. It's very claustrophobic. So we would drive to, like Canada, and mom would read to all of us. That was before we'd have like audiobooks on CD. She would just read aloud. Reading has always been big in my favorite. Read every single day to my kids since the day they were born.
I love that. What kind of books did you like to read as a kid?
As a kid, I went through my ancient Egypt phase really hard.
Oh,
I was really into the Dear America. I've always been a history nerd, even as a little kid. I got my degrees in history, actually, when I was 12 years old. It was middle school, awful. I was having a rough time, and my dad introduced me to R.A. Salvatore and the Icewind Dale trilogy. I always loved fantasy, but that just really solidified my love for fantasy.
and
And then
can you,
Sabriel by Garth Nix was my ultimate book.
what about that series spoke to you, do you think?
I like the adventure of it. I grew up watching my dad play D&D in our basement in like the early 90s. I was too young to play, so I just
Okay.
played with the dice instead. And it just felt like a big adventure. You have a main character who's not look it doesn't look like your typical main character. He's not seen as hero material, but still saving everybody despite the fact that they don't like him, with spirits.
And did you know you wanted to be a writer always?
I loved writing as a kid. I remember like second grade having the what do you want to be when you grow up? And everybody put veterinarian. It was that age. Everybody was veterinarians, and I put writer. I was just wanted to do it. And I just kind of kept doing it. And there was times I didn't write for a long time, and then I'd pick it back up again. And yeah, here I am.
What about writing appealed to you? Did you have that need to tell a story?
I just had the need to tell a story. I've always had a big imagination, even when I was a kid. My dad is very much an oral storyteller. He can barely spell sometimes,
Uh,
but he's really a fantastic storyteller. And I kind of got that from him. I wanted to get the words from my brain down on a paper. And it just keeps getting worse the older I get, and my imagination keeps growing.
So, Kate, how did you end up being in marketing then if you wanted to be a writer? What led you down that path?
Pure accident.
Okay.
I'm going to blame my husband for this one. We were living in Ohio and we watched The Social Network. He's like, that doesn't look hard. I could do that. And started applying to jobs in Silicon Valley and started getting things. We packed up everything we owned, drove 3 days to California. He got a job at a tech company. And I'm like, well, I got to do something. We had connections with a tech nonprofit, and they're like, oh, we need somebody to do our social media and admin work. I'm here. I
Hmm.
was working in a museum when we left Ohio. That was 2013, and I'm still doing it to this day.
I think that's interesting. We decided to move to Dallas, but we were living in Louisiana, so it's a 6, 7 hour drive. So it wasn't quite as crazy. It is a little, I won't say scary, but it is a little intimidating to go and just pack up everything and go, isn't it?
Yeah, it was actually a little terrifying. Like riding high on this idea, like we're starting a new life because we were in our 20s, thought nothing bad could ever happen. We got out there, lived in a hotel for a week, found a place pretty quickly, got jobs pretty quickly. But that first week, we're like, we don't know anybody. We have limited money. We have no idea what we're doing.
How long did you stay in California?
So we left in 2018 when I was pregnant with my son because my husband's from Maryland. That time we did it much easier. We paid somebody else to take all of our stuff back east and we just flew.
What's home for you then? Do you think of California as home? Do you think of Ohio as home? Do you think Maryland is home?
I think of Maryland as home now. We've been here 6 years as of this week. This is where I'm raising my kids. It's the only place they've ever known. I love living here. All my family's in Ohio, so part of my heart's there. And some of my best friends in the world are in California, so part of my heart's there too.
But it is kind of where your kids think of as home. That's got a lot to do with it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like this is the town they've known. It's where they weren't born in this town. They were born in Baltimore, but
Yeah,
for them, it's their hometown, and it feels very much like my hometown without being related to everybody here.
yeah.
So that's nice.
So let's talk about you when you started writing. Did you write a lot in high school? Did you write in college? Talk to me a little bit about your origin story as a writer.
I've been writing as long as I can remember, as long as I was able to spell.
Yeah,
There are a lot of things I wrote that were poorly spelled, obviously. I started getting a little bit more into writing in middle school just to deal with teenage angst and stuff.
yeah,
By high school, I was the editor of my school paper. I loved writing. I was in AP English classes, which fueled my imagination. By the time I got to college, I did role playing writing exercises with my friends. So we had this whole story that we created together, and everybody had a character to play. We posted on a board. We were all sitting in the same room, but we would sit there and type and post on this board to create this huge story. And that's, I think, really where it sparked of I can make more than just little short stories myself. I can make something bigger.
what was the first thing you wrote that you said, okay, yeah, I I may be able to do this?
Is it weird to say my school newspaper?
No, not
Because
at all.
it wasn't public, it wasn't like circulated around school. It was actually put in town newspaper when it
Right.
came out. And I was one of the lead journalists slash editors. There was a couple of us editors, but I was the one out there doing it. I took all the photos and I liked creating a narrative, hooking people, getting a lead. Even if it was just my friends or family reading it, it felt impactful. And I think it was mostly because it was in the whole town newspaper, not just circulating around school. People are reading what I wrote. And then when I went to college, I did a newsletter. I was with student groups and we did a newsletter where we just go and print things off and shove them into the newspapers around campus. I did a lot of that and I thought it was a lot of fun.
When did you decide you wanted to start writing stories?
I started doing a lot more writing when I started playing D&D.
You
Started doing
I was going to say you finally got a chance to play D&D, right?
I
That
did. I
was
started
my
doing
question. Please
I
tell me
got
that
there
story.
eventually. I'm a second generation player, but I kind of lost interest when my dad's game ended because we ended up moving. He never got back into it for a long time. I went to college. I had friends who played, so I would sometimes watch. But it wasn't until I was living in California in my mid 20s and I started watching Critical Role. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know this. I know this game. This seems right up what I want to do. And I went to my local game store and they did Adventurers League. So they sat me at a table and they helped me through it. I sat down with this random group of people and we were still playing together 2 years later. I have my new book coming out is actually dedicated to them because they became my family. We even when I moved across country, we would still like play over Zoom. Kind of ended for me a little bit because they're 3 hours behind, and I had a newborn. Pop in sometimes, and we'll still play. And a lot of I run D&D games for my town now. I run inclusive games for new players, especially out of the bookstores and a local brewery, especially for women who might not feel comfortable in a game store setting. The game store I went to was owned and run by a woman who suffered no idiots at all. If you made anybody feel uncomfortable, you were booted. I want to create that kind of environment for other people.
That's awesome because I think I'm a prime example. I grew up and no one played D&D and I heard about it, right? And
Mhm.
then I just never fell into the right group. Now I'm like, I just don't know how I'd find a group. What do I do? And then podcasting ended up taking all my time. I remember I was at a gym once and I was just there with my friend, and a guy came up and said, "Do you want to lift?" I'm like, "No, no, I'm fine." He goes, "No one's going to make fun of you if you want to do this." I'm like, "No, no." He says, "Okay, I'm right over there. If you change your mind, plenty of people have never lifted before. If you want to, I'd be glad to help you. And I promise you, no one's going to make fun of you." I had no interest in lifting, not someone who exercises, but that was probably 20 years ago. And that memory stuck to me. Someone saying, "Hey, it's okay. You can join this." So I think that's a beautiful thing you're doing.
It's a lot of fun because a lot of people were like, I always wanted to, but I didn't know how to start.
Yeah.
So we were sometimes run it in the bookstore, sometimes we run it at the brewery because the owner of the brewery is also a huge D&D nerd. It just gives people a place where they can feel comfortable, not be afraid of messing up or whatever. I also run one shots. I usually run about 2 hour one shots that are absolutely ridiculous. I have one I love to play that my friend wrote, and it is Escape from Flavortown. The big bad is Guy Fieri. It's wonderful seeing people start become more comfortable as the game goes on. If at first I don't know what to do, suddenly they're into this character role playing. They're creating their own story, and I'm just
Right.
facilitating it.
And I think that's another thing that people like myself would go, it's too big of a commitment, right? Versus like, nope, this is going to take a couple hours. We're
Yep.
at a brewery. You can sample. We can get a flight. We can get
Yeah.
some food, and we can
Yeah.
just have fun.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we do at the brewery. We're like, hey, go get a drink first. We'll be here and you can get up and go as you want. It's for everybody's comfort level. I only run the 2 hours because after that, my kids are like, where's mom? I got to play to my schedule. And it works out for everybody else. They don't feel like it's a huge time commitment. We're not doing a major campaign. I've been there. We ran a campaign for 2 years. We were doing 4 hours. We did epics where it was 8 hours. That is taxing on the body and the mind. But this is just something you can pop in. I do signups for people. Every time I've done signups for these games, my tables have filled up in 24 hours or less.
Well, is there themes or do you see some similarities or something that you see in common that people who go, is there feelings or things people say that have never done this before that you see a pattern?
Yeah, I have a lot of people who say, "Oh, I always wanted to do this, but I never had a group. I didn't know
Yeah.
where to start." It seemed really complicated. Or I didn't want to go to the game store, or I didn't have the people, which is why I run these games because I want new people to come into D&D. Because for me, D&D changed my life. It made it so much more fulfilling and enriched, and gave me so many good people in my life. And I completely contribute D&D to being a writer. and being a published author now.
I was running a tech support team a few years ago. I still run a tech support team, but with a different company. I was debating with one of my managers, Rich, how do we get people to think better? How do we get them to be more creative? For example, if it's not printing, the reports don't match. What do you mean? Are they running the same dates? What data do you think does it? These questions that you don't need to know the program to ask these questions.
Yeah.
He suggested, and we never could figure out a way. He said, what we really need to do is to get them to play D&D. So
Yes.
you're shaking your head. Tell me a little bit about how you think this helps people, because I'm a big believer that creative writing and music helps in students become better academics, period.
Yeah.
Talk
Yeah.
to me about how you've seen people being involved with role-playing games, not necessarily D&D, can expand into other areas.
I think with a tabletop role playing game, approach problems more critically because if the direct way isn't working, you got to find a workaround. Especially if you're playing these kind of games, you're doing collaboration. The story doesn't move if you're not all working together. If you're antagonizing each other, everything falls apart. It's a team building exercise. It's critical thinking. It's problem solving. It's all wrapped up in a fun story where you're just being silly or however you're going to be. You can be somebody different, but you can approach everyday problems by thinking outside the box, using those skills you learn from a tabletop game where you're just being a bunch of chuckle fucks. And I think it's a lot of fun. I think I've been able to approach problems differently. If my direct route is not working, well, okay, the door is locked.
Yeah.
Because as everybody knows who plays D&D, the door is the biggest enemy out there for any adventuring party.
Yeah. Okay. You said this led to writing. Talk to me about that story.
Yeah, so I think the biggest one I remember finishing because I am notorious for starting getting really gung ho write something and then completely abandoning it.
Okay.
I think a lot of the stories I've gravitated towards writing have been set in the real world, but with magical elements to it. I just started getting into my first foray into full on fantasy, but what I always have loved is this idea of magic existing in the real world. It's always there, even if other people can't tap into it. Some of the first stories I started writing were about people who have magical abilities that they don't quite understand, coming together, trying to figure things out, and getting through life together. I didn't originally start off writing romance, and then suddenly it started gravitating that way. When I wrote my series, it was actually fan fiction. I wrote Star Wars fan fiction, and then I loved it so much I tore it apart down to the bones and rewrote it into this magical paranormal romance set in a magical antique shop because I watched Warehouse 13 too many times.
Love Warehouse 13. Talk to me. What is the series? And let's do your elevator pitch on it.
The series is Magic, Love, and Mischief. The first book is Antique Magic, which sets up the world that's set in a magical antique shop called Spirit Antiques, which appears to be a regular antique shop, but really caters to the magical world in parallel with the human world. My main character is Bree, a grad student looking to make some money because grad students don't make any money, really.
Right.
And this is where she comes to learn about this world of magical creatures and mythology and falls in love with her boss, a fallen angel. And then for the rest of the series are the different cast of characters. It's all the same characters appearing, but it just focuses on different relationships in each one. My first couple in book one become secondary characters in book two. So in that way, they can be read as standalones because I'm way too lazy to write an overarching story. So everybody kind of gets their own, but you still see some of your favorites showing up. And I have some of the same tropes that go through all of them, found family being a big one for me, and food is a love language because I just snack while I write. And then each one kind of deals with different tropes. So there's 3 books out right now, and the 4th one is coming out next spring. I don't have a final date yet, but
Okay.
next spring. I progressively changed up the subgenres in there. So, first one is slow burn romance. You have an established relationship. I have a queer romance in there, and then the one coming up is a polyamorous romantic heist. My husband was watching Leverage at the time I was writing, and I kept standing in the doorway watching.
That's
I'm like, I could do
interesting. Yeah.
I could do that. And then I started writing it like, why did I do this?
I remember Robert Asprin, the Myth series, talked about that on the first book he wrote, he thought it would be fun to have fake quotes before each chapter. I don't know if you've ever read the series,
I haven't,
but
no.
no, it was a parody of fantasy books. And he would take a different trope like the Magnificent Seven, right? So he had this
Okay.
5 or 7 misfits fighting a huge battle, right?
Mhm.
And for fun, he would have the world is heavy, Atlas, right? Dumb statements. He later said coming up with the damn quotes was almost harder than actually writing the books. I get
Sure.
that. You said that you didn't want to do an overall series, but you loved playing in this world. I remember Peter David, the writer, said that he thought Lee Falk's Phantom was the perfect character because it had been over 200 years. You want to write a Western? The Phantom could be a Western. You want to do
Yeah,
a pirate story? The Phantom's always a pirate. You want to do
true.
archaeology? Just because of the different time. So I
Mhm.
love the idea that you're doing this, it's your world, but you can go with different things. How many books do you think you want to go in this?
I'm taking a break after book 4. It fought me so much to get book 4
Okay.
that I'm going to take a step back. The current project I'm working on is an overarching storyline of at least 2 to 3 books in a full
Okay.
fantasy setting. It's time to challenge myself. I can't just keep playing in the same world and not making an overarching story. It's been fun because it's been a challenge to do that. The one I have coming out is a standalone, a one-shot thing, but this is challenging me as a writer, making me just keep taking the easy way out. I have to push forward.
Is that important to you?
I don't want to feel like I'm getting too comfortable. If I'm getting too comfortable, I won't grow as a writer. So I give myself little challenges. Even if it's like I'm never going to get out of romance. I love romance. It's my
Yeah.
wheelhouse, and that's what I like writing. The only other thing I've written that wasn't romance was a history research thing I was doing about post Kent State at Ohio University when they shut down the university. That I did for the museum. That is the only thing that was not really
Okay.
romance related. But I'd like to play with inside that genre because there's so much to explore within romance.
The new book, Love Across the Tabletop, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Coming out November 5th.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about this.
Yeah, so it's actually a funny story how it happened because my former DM back in California, my friend Elle, she's like, "Why don't we write D&D romances?" I'm like, "That sounds dope. Let's do it." So we started writing them together. We were writing our own stories, sending each other chapters back and forth. And she's a much better writer than I am. I am not too proud to say she is a fantastic writer, the best storyteller I have ever come across. She has moved me to tears at the D&D table. Granted, I was pregnant at the time, but that's not the point. We decided to write them together. She finished hers right around the time we were working on them is when I got with Four Horsemen. We were going back and forth, and a lot of the things I put into the book was from some of our games, and she had the same with some of the things from our games over the years. Because we share exactly one brain cell, we both dedicated them to our D&D group, the Inhumans.
That's
So
nice. Why is it important for you to be diverse in your characters? You mentioned that you had a queer couple.
Mhm.
Why is this
Oh,
important to show diversity?
I can only speak from full experience as a white woman. I use sensitivity readers. I have my beta readers because I think it's important to show that the world is not monochromatic. I have queer characters because there are queer people. My main character, Wes, is very important to me because he has bipolar. I'm bipolar. There are invisible things that people go through that you don't see. That doesn't mean they don't suffer from them. I write characters that are autistic coded because my kids are autistic. My husband's autistic. These are the people in my life. I have characters of color because the world is not monochromatic. I try to be sensitive to that I can't speak from their experiences, but I can listen to others when I'm writing. So the world isn't all just white, neurotypical people. My main character in my upcoming novel, she's Jewish. I'm Jewish. So I wanted to speak from that angle and also to help me with realizing my Jewish identity. I was not born Jewish. I'm a Jew by choice because my husband's Jewish. To let me explore that identity of myself as well.
I love that. I am a 65-year-old white guy raised in the South. I live in Texas. One of the things that confuses me and candidly angers me, Kait, is how someone can't understand that there's a different perspective out there, right? How
Right.
can
Yeah.
I, as a 65-year-old white guy, understand a 25-year-old African American male or female, right?
Mhm.
I heard a couple of people using the phrase I'm queer.
Mhm.
I have a wonderful friend that I've only met once. When I went to see Bruce Springsteen on Broadway, she took the train down and we had lunch together. Bella had been
Aw.
on the podcast many times. Joke, and I'm only halfway joking. I wish I had a daughter and that she was gay so she could marry Bella.
Have her in the family.
I adore Bella. So I emailed her and said, I apologize if this is offensive, but you're the only person I trust. I don't understand where being called queer came from, and I
Mhm.
want to understand it. If I'm asking a bad question, please just forgive me. She sent me a wonderful text like, it's perfectly fine. It's going to take me a little time. And she sent me this wonderful email explaining, and she goes, I am honored you're asking me to queer explain you.
Love that.
And in fact, there's two from the UK, two queer podco hosts called The Boss Belongs to Us. It's a whole series about how Bruce is a queer icon.
Yeah.
I reached out to them and said, any chance you want to be on the podcast? And I said, Bella was on multiple years ago and said, these are Bruce's five gayest songs. And they replied, we'd absolutely love to talk to you. We're trying to work out the schedules. I realized before the pandemic, Kait, that if I wasn't careful, this podcast would be nothing but middle-aged white guys. Not this one, but my Bruce Springsteen podcast, right?
Right.
Because Bruce is huge under white middle-aged guys, right? And so I specifically started looking for people of different races, different colors, and different age groups to try to find that
Yes.
diversity.
I feel
So
like I'm doing the bare minimum, honestly. I think everybody should strive for that.
how hard is it because I remember reading when you read a book, the character always looks like you.
Yeah.
I had Terry Moore. He writes Strangers in Paradise, his first well known comic book. And he talked about, and I told him there's Katru and Francine. And as I started reading the series, I realized I wanted them to be together. That was new to me growing up in the South in a Southern Baptist home and, you
Mhm.
know, and I realized, no, I want these couple to be together. And
Yeah.
I shared with him, I said, I don't think that's totally how my eyes were open, but it was at least one of the keys that allowed me to think differently. He said he had a cousin who was gay, and he realized his cousin never saw characters like himself.
Yeah.
That's why he included the characters.
I love that. I absolutely love that because you're giving something to the people in your life who might not see themselves represented.
Yeah.
I read a book recently. It was a Regency romance.
Mm,
Main love interest was autistic coded. And you don't see that in Regency
yeah.
books, especially romance. You don't see a whole lot of autism representation, especially in the male love interest. And you could just tell like somebody in her life impacted her to write that,
Yeah.
just for them to be a love interest. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think Hallmark kind of brought it back a little bit. But last year they had one of their Christmas movies was, a, a lesbian couple was the lead, and who we are.
Yeah.
And despite what some presidential candidates think, it makes us better people.
Yes.
Your friend and you both in a healthy competition decide, I'm going to write a role-playing romance,
Yeah.
which
No, it's less competition, more just having fun
yeah,
together.
yeah. I remember Neil Gaiman said that if someone comes to him and says, Neil, I need a short story for my collection. What do you want it to be about? He said, I'm going to struggle. But if you tell me, well, if the short story is about an angel, it's a collection of angel stories, and we don't have any stories where the angel's an animal. Ah, now I have an idea, right?
Yeah.
So this is good for you to do. How excited are you playing in this new world?
I had so much fun because I got a draw from this some of the dumb things we did at the tabletop. But then got to craft this love story that it's a friends to lovers. And I set it in DC, so I gotta put it in places I like to go.
Right.
It was also nice to take a break from the world I had already been building to create these characters that I modeled off of the people in my life, the people I sat around gaming with. The table in Love Across the Tabletop is much smaller. I was at a table, there was 7 of us playing and then our DM. So we were quite a large group. I kind of scaled that down because I'm like, I still have to write this.
Sure.
But yeah, it was fun to take this break. This book was so easy for me to write once I got into it. I got to share that joy every chapter with my friend Elle. And she would give me feedback, or she'd be like, I remember this game that we did this in. It was like, I got to be back at that table again, even though I was,
Yeah.
an entire country apart, basically.
Do you think you're going to want to do this again? Not necessarily revisit that world, but in the spirit of exercising, right? Like you take a break from working your cardio or upper body and you work your lower body. Do you think between this series you may do one-offs just to work your brain a different way?
Yeah, I actually have another project I was working on that's a standalone. And then I got totally caught up into this fantasies. I think what I'm doing is do a series and then taking a break, doing one.
Standalone. Yeah, it is. So, Kate, what haven't I asked you that I should have?
I don't know. I have Monday break. I'm just over here just trying to stay hydrated.
Yes. Okay. I had a guy on my Bruce Springsteen podcast. It was finished. I had stopped recording. I said, I hope you had fun. He goes, oh, I had a great time. He said, next time I'm on, I'll tell you the time I got drunk with the E Street Band. How do you not lead with that story? I was so shocked. I didn't even think about hitting record again. So anyway, just in case there was this massive story, like, oh, if you'd asked me, I would have told you.
I do have a fun one because I feel like it ties like D&D and people who love
Okay.
this kind of storytelling. A couple of weeks ago, I did an author signing at the Maryland Run Fest, which is amazing. I went the weekend before with my family for my anniversary.
Okay.
And when I pitch my series, I always say it has the crossover of House Moving Castle and Warehouse 13. Every time I do that, most people just give me a look like I have no idea what that is, but I know House Moving Castle. At Renfest, almost every single person is like, I love Warehouse 13. People would just stand there and talk to me. They want to know about my books. They want to talk about like movies and TVs, shows that we all loved. And I sold out. They had to shut
Wow.
me. People bought my display copies.
Nice.
They brought me out. I got back to my car when I was leaving and I burst into tears. I ended up calling my mom because I had an hour drive home. I have never felt so loved by so many strangers as I did the Renaissance Festival
With your people.
with my people. It was, I have never, like, for me, and my mom kept saying it, she's like, you know what that means? I
I
had
love
people
that
come up to me,
story.
I'm reading this book right now. I'm loving it. She bought all 3 books. I'm getting choked thinking about it because it was the most amazing experience of my life as an author. I've been to bigger conventions where people have come to see me, but I have never felt so much love by just random people who were just excited to talk to me, to read my books. When I was walking out, there was somebody next to me and I'd recognized him and he looked at me, he's like, oh, I started reading your book. We're still at the festival. And he's like, I'm loving it. I didn't want to put it down. I wanted to keep reading, but he's there with his family. And he was already reading the book and
That's
stopped to talk to me as
awesome.
I'm heading out.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm gonna probably start crying. I'm gonna cry into my
no,
run.
that is greatness. I love that story. That's so good. All
Yeah,
right. So, Love Across the Tabletop, out no
check
election
there.
day.
There we go.
Yep. And it's going to be wonderful. I'm looking. And then the Antique Magic, first book of the
First
series.
book.
And we will include links in this. Kate, this has been so much fun.
This
Any
was
final
great.
thoughts before we wrap it up?
On November 5th, get a copy of Love Across Tabletop, but don't forget to vote. Vote first, then go read.
Yes.
This has been fun. If you like buying books, support for Horsemen Publications. They are amazing. You're helping authors first. If you want to buy from actual bookstores, I highly recommend supporting your local indie bookstore. Keep your money in your local economy. Support small businesses. If you want to support me, go to the Last Word in Mount Airy, Maryland. They have all my books there signed. I'm also their social media coordinator, so you're doubly paying me if you buy from them.
I end every episode of the Writers Bunkhouse with this question. There are songs that we love because they speak to us, and there are songs that are our favorite songs, and songs that we play when we're depressed and when we're happy and when we feel like being in love. But as a writer, I want to know, what do you think are 2 or 3 of the best written songs that you've run into?
So I have two right now, and this is just my mindset because I've been using both of these songs in the writing of my current book, and it's just given me so much inspiration in writing. And they are two very different songs. The first one is Fast Car by Tracy Chapman. I think she is one of the most brilliant storytellers ever. Yeah, that song, you go through the whole like range of emotions. You have this hopefulness, looking towards the future, this I can be somebody bigger. I have a whole future ahead of me, to realizing things don't work out, that you can hope and try, and life doesn't always work out that way. And then you have that hopeful, right, like I could be someone, be someone, be someone. So we were listening to it in the car just before this, and my kids are in the backseat singing it. I I could listen to it on repeat.
Great
Um,
choice.
yeah, the one I've been using is the Summoning by Sleep Token, which it has been used for Death Eater TikTok,
Okay.
but because I'm writing this romance and it's a very yearning romance, I think their lyrics are so evocative. There's such yearning in it and wanting to give everything of yourself, hard and rough, but also feminine and divine. I think they're very different in terms of songs, but in songwriting, it hits at some deeper emotion. I feel like Sleep Token does more getting into the emotional aspect, and Tracy Chapman really knows how to craft a story in the span of a few minutes.
Wonderful choices, both of them. I really appreciate it. All right. If someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
I'm chronically online. You can find me on Instagram at Kait Disney. I'm on book threads a lot, so go to threads. I'll be there. I
Okay.
engage with people a lot on book threads. You can find me also on my website, www.authorkaitdisneyleugers.com. Honestly, if you just look up Disney Leugers, there are four of us and they all live in this house.
All right. The latest book, Love Across the Tabletop, available on election day. Check it out. It sounds like it's going to be a blast. Also, check out her Warehouse 13 romance set in a fantasy world. Sounds amazing. I'm going to check them both out. Thank you
Excellent.
so much for your time. I hope you had fun.
I had loads of fun. Thank you for having me.
Listeners, I know times are tough right now and there's a lot going on. And if you ever start feeling depressed, I want you to remember something. You haven't read your favorite book yet. Thank you. Be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.